famous venture capitalists in America said software is eating the world. And I think on the first initial check I wrote, must have been 100 times the investment. For me as an investor, that meant that the money I invested went probably close to a 2000x.
Hi, and welcome to Angel Talks, a podcast that provides exclusive insights into the world of angel investing. I am your host, Sona Vezirian, director at Bana Angels, a pioneering angel investing network in Armenia, with over 5 years of experience in the field. We have 26 startups in our portfolio and prominent angel investors from all over the world. You can learn more about us at bana.am. Here at Angel Talks, we are gathering with distinguished investors who share their experiences, personal stories, tips, and tricks to help you start doing angel investing or become better at it. Today, I am honored to have Bas Godska as my guest. Bas is one of top 10 most active angel investors in CIS. He is one of top 50 European angel investors according to Crunchbase. Bas is a founding partner at Acrobator Ventures. He has more than 40 personal investments in startups, and he has a Decacorn in his portfolio, which is a startup with over $10 billion valuation. So in this episode, we will discuss the motivations behind angel investing, why people do it, dive deeper into Bas's personal story, how he started, and his success. So let's start. Hi, Bas. Thank you for being my guest today.
Hello, Sona. Thanks for having us.
So you are a very experienced angel investor with many interesting companies in your portfolio. How would you define angel investing for yourself?
It's helping people with a dream to achieve their goals with your experience, because you've maybe made the mistakes or the victories already before, where they're just entering as a young entrepreneur or a second-time entrepreneur in the market.
Interesting. So while doing that, so angel investing is considered to be very profitable kind of investment type. What's the financial aspect of it? Of course, it has very a big impact aspect and like personal aspect, but what's the financial aspect for it? Like, why is it profitable? Why is it so?
Good question. Various research has shown a result of in between 25 and 35% IRR. IRR is a term meaning internal rate of return. Now, if you look at your bank account, maybe that's like a few percent. So angel investing is very profitable, but you also have an amazing quantity of companies dying in their early stage. So 80% I've read, or 60%, or even 90% of companies don't survive their first year or their first 1.5 years. So the risks are very, very high. You need to understand immediately that you're saying goodbye to the company, not be emotional about it if it happens. Of course, help the founder with such a tragic end of their project, but that means that it's very high risk money you invest. But with the ones that succeed, considering you were their very first investor, the returns can be very, very high. So it kind of levels each other out, and only with the right strategy you can become a very successful entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, we hear all these stories about this startup making a great exit or having this many millions of users, doing a new huge round of investments, like getting a lot of money from top venture capital funds in the world. But what we need to realize that in all this success, angel investors are the ones who are actually making the most benefits, if we can say so, right?
Yeah, angels, they sit on board with a company when the valuation can be maybe 1,000 times lower than a company that has already reached their $1 billion valuation, the unicorns, or even their $10 billion valuation, like decacorns, we call them. So yeah, it is. I think the very, yeah, I would say the sexiest way of investing. You're the closest to the actual growth curve, to the learning curve of the founder. You can help and you can see results often very quickly from anything they implement. There's a very creative level of constructive chaos in startups at that earlier level that will slowly maybe disappear
Mhm.
as the company grows and becomes more grown up.
It's very profitable and interesting what we can see for an investor's perspective. Let's talk a little about startups. Um, why are startups different from any other businesses? And like, where are those startups? Like, how you found those 40 plus startups to invest, Bas?
Yeah, startups and the whole ecosphere, we normally refer to startups as companies in the digital sphere, which is not completely correct because you can also have a startup, I would say, in the real world, in the offline world. So there are definitions about startups, but for this podcast, we're mainly focusing on the digital startups. And why are they exciting? Because if you would, for instance, in the real world, in the offline world, I would say, invest in a bakery, then to set up a second bakery and a third bakery, you can try to do that fast, but it's for scaling pretty hard, fairly slow. You need to find locations, etc. Now with digital, once you have product market fit, as they call it, so basically you are really delivering a product to the market, a software product that is needed and people find it and download it, then it can go extremely fast and you can very well scale. And if you look at the last 100 years of value development, then the highest achieving area has that kind of outperformed all other commodity or financial investment has been in the software area. Of course, 100 years ago, there was no software, but it's more about that you can see the start from 100 years ago, and then all of a sudden there is software. And as some famous venture capitalists in America said, software is eating the world, and it's at a very rapid pace, overtaking values. When you look at the Nasdaq, or actually at the Wall Street top 100 companies, you'll see that the ones dominating the valuations are very often companies that have a very strong digital aspect.
Yeah, agree. And yeah, the second part of the question, how you source those startups, how you find them, where you find them, actually.
Yeah. Startups are being set up by humans, and human beings you can find on this planet on many spots. And basically, it's a very much a people's effort. So you meet a person, and your intuition, your intellectual radar, they tell you, wow, this is a person that really is passionate about their project. They already know a lot about the topic, and actually there is a resonance. It resonates with you that you actually think, hey, but this girl or guy actually has a point. Yeah, I am also frustrated that my car is not delivering particular usability, and this company is trying to fix it. Or my I would like to have a software piece that helps me better create music. Or and then they've always find pain points, whether it's in companies or in life, and they dream, these founders, about these entrepreneurs about fixing that area, and maybe they had some story in their life that got them the idea. That's very often the case, and they wanted to maybe help a family member with a problem or something they experienced in their job. And with the passion of that idea, they start making reality out of that idea, and that actually in itself gives a great vibe, a great energy. So the moment as an angel investor you feel that there's a personal connection with that person, with that problem, with the pain point, with the product they are making, and actually also with your own expertise where you can add value with your knowledge. Maybe you're a great lawyer, maybe you're a great finance person, maybe you're a wonderful programmer. If you see that somebody is trying something and you have experience, then you become a very attractive angel investor for the founder, because you will bring what they call smart money. You just don't give them the money, you also give them advice. And if it's a great founder, they will, in most cases, value your advice and implement it, or have a very interesting discussion with you why not. So, sourcing, I would say, if it's a practical guide on where to find those founders, do not
Mhm.
underestimate your own network. I would say that's the first things. Just check if there's people in your network that are involved in the sector, in the technology sector, and say, hey, I came across a person that I know for 10 years. They left their job. They were really great in what they did. And now they have set up a startup half a year ago. You should talk with them. Okay, and have a coffee, have a lunch, get to know the person, ask why they are doing this, etc. So that would be referrals. If you do not have that many people in your network, then I would say an area to source number two would be conferences or angel networks, where you can find like-minded people and see that it's a bit of a marketplace, or what they call network effect, where there's both founders, startup entrepreneurs coming, and potential investors, or people who first want to learn a bit more and then gradually become an investor. So then a third element would be, if you are in your particular area of expertise a visible person, then any moments where you are maybe talking at a conference, or you're doing a podcast or a blog post, it could be that you reach people out there that you would normally not meet, and they will knock on your door, your email inbox, or through someone that they see on LinkedIn that knows you, and you will get what they call inbound deal flow. Deal flow is any lead, I would say, any opportunity where a startup founder says, hey, I want to talk to you, maybe you want to invest in my company. So for instance, our venture capital fund, we have many thousands in our deal flow pipeline, as they call it. And I think it's very important for an angel, because that's not an institutional investor, to be very visible and have access to a lot of deal flow. Which brings me actually as a footnote to the point that you would normally see that angel investing is hard work. You need to probably spend more time selecting and filtering out the bad opportunities from the good ones. So it's not that once you meet with a founder that immediately means you should invest, or that even 10 founders means that you should invest in one or two. Actually, the average number you hear in the industry is about 1%. So it could be that you actually have 100 startup founders pitching their idea, and there's only one where you say, wow, this really goes well. Sometimes it's even less. Sometimes it's more. If you, for instance, have a group of friends that are very knowledgeable in a particular area and they already went through selecting, it could be that they actually present you with a referral of already pre-selected, which doesn't mean that you should immediately invest, but it actually filters a lot of the lower or medium quality or less matching founders from your overall deal flow. And of course, last point there, sorry, is serendipity. I think there's a lot of unexpected elements. You sit in a plane, you start talking to the person next to you, and all of a sudden they have a very great idea and you love it. And maybe you already decide to invest at the end of the flight, which I actually don't recommend. Always take at least one night before you say yes, one day, to calmly think it over, check around. Maybe there's very strong competitors that you never heard of, but once you zoom in a bit, you find them.
Yeah, I like that you talked a lot about like people aspect, human aspect of the sourcing the deals. And that's actually all about angel investing. Like everything around angel investing is communicating with people, being out there, talking. Even I heard a case when hairdresser advised a deal, a startup, and it turned out to be a pretty good one. And an investor, one of our investors, like put money in their startup. So that's can be like the startups can come from very unexpected sources,
I completely
somewhere you
agree,
wouldn't like
Sona.
predict. Yeah,
Yeah,
not only on the investors meetups and conferences or all the like tech events you
yeah.
can like think the first about, but yeah.
I think a last point regarding sourcing a startup, this is a rare one, but I think once you have a particular idea
Hmm.
in your head that you think, hey, this is a pain point in my sector, I do not have the time to develop it, but actually you could go researching and just look if you can find online efforts, maybe in a site called Crunchbase or on LinkedIn, or even read the tech magazines. You can actively go out there and search for an opportunity. And actually, if you have friends in the finance sector that are, for instance, in a venture capital fund, they often tell their startups that knock on the door that are very early that it's too early. They should come back later. If you have a few of those friends that get this big deal flow of a venture capital fund, you could actually ask them,
Hmm.
like, hey, anything that is too small, too early for you, that you feel, wow, if they had 1 or 2 digits more in sales revenue, we would probably invest. You could actually tell them, like, okay, send those kind of very early stage startups to me to talk with, and then you save yourself a lot of sourcing because they'll be your referrer.
So, what's the typical process for you, Bas, when you found a startup and until you decide to make an investment?
Great question. I think you can spend a whole podcast on it, so I'll be very brief how that would work. So, firstly, you
Hmm.
source the startup, you interact, and you do some social validation. So, you double check the background of the founder. You do some concept validation where you speak with experts in the field or even potential co investors, what they think about this area and this particular company and founder. Once that all is in place, you try to get a very simple legal deal in place. There are a few instruments for that, like the convertible note or the safe note, depending on in which territory you operate. And then it's a question of a little bit of negotiating, double checking some documentation they provide, understanding better in depth how the founder thinks about the future for their company or the founding team, how they think about the future. And then once you wire the money, it's definitely not that you kind of lean back and the race is over and you just wait till there's an exit. Firstly, be patient. It could be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years before this company really starts paying off. Or you get out early at some Series A investment round, which is when already the kind of larger funds start putting more money in the company. But yeah, just know that once you are on board, it's not easy to to 1, 2, 3 get out. So it's really like a midterm play. And I guess exits, that's a
Hmm.
completely different topic. Of course, it's very important, but in this time frame, I'd like to keep it short. First, make sure that you create a very diversified group of startups. There is even a mathematical model saying that if you invest in one, it's roughly 90% that you lose all of your money. If you invest in 30 startups, 30, then you actually have a chance of 95% that you're not losing money. So I would really recommend that in the process to
Yeah.
make sure that you make it a scalable and repeatable process.
Hmm. Yeah. I believe we will have a chance to dive deeper into the points you mentioned, like one by one. To sum up the first part, I would say that angel investing is one of the most profitable investments type you can come up with and start doing. Um, and it has like a lot of social benefits with it. You meet interesting people, you socialize, you could go to these conferences, events, and uh, all the like other benefits related to it. But it's considered to be very risky, and you need to wait long period, 4 to 6 years, to get your exits. So yeah, it's a threshold, like everything else in the life. Thank you very much for your inputs, and we'll be back for our second part. Well, we will learn more about your personal story and personal investments. So, Bess, tell us a little about your background, your education, your life before angel investing, and then we will like learn how you started angel investing.
Cool. I am a Dutchman. Some call me the digital Dutchman. I have a background in law and Russian language in Amsterdam, and then after living and working in a law firm, I didn't like it that much, and I emigrated to Australia. And there, I went to the University of Technology to understand in 2000 what's this whole internet thing. And then I set up a small internet shop and an offline shop, and then it became a larger company. So that was very good to learn the practice of how to grow a company with this mix of offline and online. And at that time, like Google was a small startup, there was no Facebook, etc. So it was fairly early. And because Australia was English language, they were closer to the developments of the United States than other countries more down again back in Europe. So when I came back to Europe in 2003, having sold my company but not so successfully in Australia, but with a lot of knowledge, I noticed that I was ahead of the market. So I went to a big travel company, corporate .com company, lastminute.com, and grew quickly to the management level of this company, and learned to refine, also with the help of people in the head office in the United Kingdom, to apply marketing strategies. And I developed a formula called Cash Cow Bomber. At that time, it was Cash Cow. We don't have time now to go into what every character in this formula means. But long story short, I became pretty advanced for that time in marketing online, and that was also definitely my passion. And I understood that that will be the activity I want to do, if it's not for the rest of my life, then at least for a couple of decades. And I then became an entrepreneur, and I set up a consultancy firm to implement these marketing strategies for new digital companies in the Netherlands and abroad. But as an entrepreneur, I failed because my knowledge, I recruited people in the market, but they were not salespeople. They were not really selling products. So I lost all the money I had made before, or a lot of it, and had to go back to a payroll job. But it was a very serious payroll job, in the sense that I became chief marketing officer for the number two travel company in the world. And they gave me $100 million budget to invest in marketing in 13 countries in Europe. And that was very good for me to also test the formula Cash Cow Bomber inside a very large international operating company. So I became one of the, well, I would say more visible European marketing people with big budgets in many countries. So you could verify whether something works in Finland or in Spain or in the United Kingdom or in Germany. So that was very exciting, and with a great smart group of teams across all those countries. And then at some point, I got a bit literally exhausted and tired because I was in a plane 4 times a week. And it was just at some point at night, the American company was implementing new platforms for Europe. So I got tired and understood that if I continue at this pace, things were maybe not be good. So I took a few weeks off on a Turkish island. And then I get this phone call from a number one headhunter company in the world, and they say, "Well, there is a British investment fund. They're investing in Russia, and we noticed on LinkedIn that you speak Russian, which I didn't speak very well at the time, but basically." And they said, "Why don't you come with your digital knowledge to Russia, to Moscow, and you'll be the upcoming boss of Ozon.ru, which is the Russian Amazon. It was the largest, or maybe top two largest internet company in Russia." So that was a big
Mm-hmm.
change of culture, a big change of business methods, etc. A very steep learning curve. And then in 2008, the ruble crashed. So I basically all the expats left, and I was still there. And I thought, wow, this is such an interesting market. It's so big and yet so underdeveloped, relatively speaking, because my knowledge was like several years ahead of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And now, finally, I'll tell you how this whole angel investing started. So I had this corporate experience. I left Ozon. I went to help set up La Moda, which was a Rocket Internet company doing fashion. Then I went to a shopping club. I mean, a lot of things. I actually also became a founder of a travel company because people in Russia said you cannot sell tour packages online. And me and my two friends, we said we can. And we set up what I would say pretty much one of the market leaders in Russia at the time. This is all over 10 years ago. And basically, startup founders, talented young people with a dream to build a company or already had set their first footsteps in entrepreneurship, they came to ask for advice. And I loved to give advice. My father is a teacher. Maybe I wanted to help a bit with teaching people what I already had learned in the 10 years before. And those smart people, they said, "But we want more of your advice. We want you to keep helping us." But I had very big projects to run. So I could only do this in the evenings. And sometime I said, "Okay, I'm not a charity. You know what? If you
Mm-hmm.
give me some advisory shares in the company, then I will help you when I have time to help you build your company." And that was so energy creating, so sexy, because you would come with your experience, a young, enthusiastic, smart team. They would implement something in a few weeks or in a week or whatever, and you could see the measurable results. So there was a very good mutual benefit. And then I said, "Okay, I like how you work. I'm glad you can use my advice. You know what? I'll put some savings into your company." And this process, because it really was like a hobby and a passion, it was very organic. And when I noticed, after being busy with all these large companies that were paying me as a consultant or recruited me as a chief marketing officer, on the side, I would do these side investments. And at some point, it was 10 investments, 20 investments. And the press started writing about me that I was the biggest angel investor in the CIS countries. And I also started investing in Holland. And that got me what we called in the first episode of this podcast deal flow. So a lot of people started writing, like, "Hey, I have a business plan. Do you also want to help me and invest in our company?" And I never really thought of it as a professional business or as a professional investing. I didn't feel that I had to go very deep into Excel spreadsheets with financial models, because a startup is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that after half a year they pivot, or a pivot means that they change their business approach or their business model, or they would get a few big clients and all of a sudden they were 10 times bigger. So it was hard to put the normal standard kind of metrics that you use for later stage companies on these kindergarten small companies that have maybe 10,000 revenue or 100,000 revenue. And by the time they grow bigger, then the kind of MBA level kind of financial management topics become more relevant. So I had a big portfolio, and the portfolio was growing like crazy. And then I actually understood, okay, so I'm apparently an angel investor. It was not something you go to school for. It's not something you create a strategy for it. It was something that just life brought to me, and I brought it to the world, and that was angel investing. And there were also no other angel investors on the radar. I was alone, and I got used to playing this game alone. And only after years, I started seeing other people doing the same. And yeah, that's in a nutshell. Of course, after that, I set up a venture capital fund. That's all another story. But the development of angel investing, that's now been my short, or not so short, explanation of my biography.
Yeah, very interesting actually. Um, so, can you please tell us uh, one or two stories, successful stories from your portfolio?
At some point, when I was still working at lastminute.com, a Dutch guy knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this smart TV thing where you can buy your travel on a TV." And this was in 2003, so there were hardly any digital TVs. And I agreed because I could see the concept that this could start working well. And we were also trying mobile commerce at the time. So, and then 3 months later, he calls me and says, "Bas, I did some more research, and it's great that you were willing to believe in me and invest in me, but I'm going to give you back the money." I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, because I think it's too early." And okay, I was very impressed. This was the first time that happened to me, that a founder who successfully raised my angel money said, "I'm going to give it back." And then a few
Mhm.
years later, I get a call from the same entrepreneur. He says, "Bas, I have a new idea. Remember me from a few years ago? Where are you now?" I was at the time in Kiev. He said, "Okay, I'm jumping on a plane from Amsterdam. I'll come to Kiev and let's have breakfast tomorrow." Okay. So, of course, I paid attention to someone flying to another country to speak with me, and already remembering how honest and transparent he was in the past, and how much he valued human connection over financial returns. So, I was
Yeah.
listening to him very carefully, and he explained his vision in a very proper and smart way. It was disrupting the HR tech industry. So when you look at the resume, the CV of a person outlining their talents in a resume and sending it to a potential employer, that process hasn't changed since Leonardo da Vinci, since Michelangelo. That's like 14th, 15th century. Nothing changed. And he wanted to disrupt this. And I immediately believed in the pain point. He explained to me how big companies get thousands and thousands of resumes, and a quarter of everything people write in their resume is maybe a little bit better than the reality. They may be telling it a bit more beautiful their career than it was in reality, things like that. So he created an algorithm and a program where you would have a game where you would actually sit in a company in this game, and you would perform tasks, and the system would very smartly check how quick you type, how you answer people in a call center, or how you work in a restaurant, or things like that. And it was fun for people to do. And at the same time, it gathered the same skills
Mm.
topics digitally that normally a human being would need to filter from the resume with human errors and inconsistency. And this was an investment I made at the time. And this company was sold, I think, 2 years ago now, or 1.5 years, for a nine-digit sum. So um, I think I did, yeah, I think on the first initial check I wrote, must have been 100 times the investment, or maybe even 200 times. I don't have the exact numbers now, but that is amazing, because when you look at my example from the first episode with the bakery, maybe you get 10%, 15% return in a year, maybe 25%. Here you are talking about a multiple. So you are getting, for every $100 you invested, you get times 10, times 100. So that's crazy. Of course, this doesn't mean that all the angel startup investments work like that, but the ones that when you hit it big, you can hit it really big. So this was a nice example of a Dutch startup that had a very nice exit, and where I was the first angel investor. This one is very funky. I met in 2013 in Moscow a young man, Andrei. and he was still looking at various businesses or ideas, and we became friends. And I didn't even invest in the beginning. We just, for a year or two, I tried to explain it to him, my marketing formula, cash cow bomber, and he was interested in talking about go-to-market strategy, about business strategy. We would see each other from time to time, and I really got to love how he looked at entrepreneurship and at technology and how resourceful he was in his ideas. And then I told him, listen, whenever you grasp a project that you really think works well, then please be the first. Let me be the first you call to invest. Yeah, but I'm not yet sure, and I don't need money for now, and I'm working on something else, and And then at some point, basically, he said, "Bas, I finally got it, and I'm raising an investment round." And I say, "Well, actually, now that I know you for years, how you work and how you operate and how you think, I probably don't even need to go that deep into your company presentation. So, of course, I will. But how much do you need?" He mentioned an amount. I said, "Okay, I can do that much, and I will ask two friends to join." So we took a part of that investment round, and basically that company became Miro. And Miro is now a powerhouse Decacorn. So their December 21 valuation was $17.5 billion. And that was an amazing roller coaster ride with currently close to 50 million users worldwide. And what they do is basically let people work together remotely on a whiteboard and brainstorm, work with design thinking, agile. You can do a lot in this thing. If you don't use it, let me make some advertisement. Use Miro.com as your cornerstone for innovation in your organizations. And I think 95 or 99% of the Fortune 500, they actually are a client of this company. And for me as an investor, that meant that the money I invested went probably close to a 2000x, or maybe 1,000 and 1,500x. So every dollar I invested became 1,000 or 1.5. So that's an amazing story, from how you become the first angel investor in a seed round in such a startup at a single-digit valuation, and then it goes to such a crazy valuation. Now that's a lottery ticket in a way, of course, but it's all about people. If I wouldn't have trusted the founder and noticed his talents and had a relationship for many months or years, seeing him develop, then maybe I would have never invested.
Yeah, that's a very inspiring story. That's true angel path, and very interesting story. Yeah, thank you very much for telling us about your experience and how you started, how it's going. So we'll be back for the third part for some really quick questions. So, Bas, let's go really quickly into the 3 very quick questions. The first one is, what has been the most rewarding thing for you in angel investing?
Getting to know a lot of smart, fun, original thinking people. Being constantly in an advising and learning role, and enjoying the serendipity, the kind of crazy unpredictableness, and of course, crazy returns, very good financial returns.
Yeah, fair enough. What would you advise someone who is just starting angel investing?
Consider it a casino, so don't spend all your money on it. I would recommend to, if you have money you do not immediately need in the coming half year, whatever, take 10% of that amount only, maybe 15, depending, and invest that and write it off immediately. know that you will probably lose this money and don't be emotional about it. You went to the angel casino. This is what it is. And diversify. Don't go for just one angel startup, but quickly, or not quickly, but make sure you set up a strategy of investing in 10, 20, maybe 30 portfolio companies. Otherwise, you'll have a very, very high chance of losing. So diversify.
Yeah. What is the primary factor that you look at when evaluating the startup? Like one most important thing.
Here, I'd love to negotiate with you and give you also maybe a second one, but I would say if you force me to only have one, then it would be the founding team. It's all about people. So if that is
Mhm.
good, then the rest is just being able to solve problems that you come along. If I can squeeze in a second one, I would say you definitely need to see that it's a real problem they are trying to fix that is really needed in society. If you do not see that and it's just a very niche kind of strange little thing they're doing, then the addressable market or the demand is maybe not big enough for it to succeed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Bas. This have been really interesting conversation. Thank you for your knowledge, experience. You shared with us all the insights. I really enjoyed our talk, and I hope our listeners will get a lot of useful information from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sona. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. Please subscribe to our podcast to keep up with our future episodes. Don't forget to join our Telegram channel, where we will share information on meetups, events, and webinars with startup founders and angel investors, as well as relevant materials on the topic. If you have a suggestion, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Help spread the word about angel investing by sharing this episode with your network. You might be the one who inspires the next successful angel investor. It's time to grow your wings. So, see you soon.